Hi, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm Emily Marison, Ohio State University Extension Family and Consumer Sciences educator in Coshocton County. And boy, has it been hot over the past week. We got a little cool weather over the weekend, but it's going to get hot again soon. So if you're looking for a way to cool down a little bit, we've got a cool treat for tonight. We're going to be making berry pineapple fluff, and you can find this recipe by going to our website, which is coshocton.osu.edu. There are really just a few simple ingredients in this, and it is something that is very diabetes friendly. So for this Dining with Diabetes cooking demonstration, tonight we're going to be making berry pineapple fluff. So to start with, let's look at what the ingredients are. We're going to have some type of berries. Now this is up to what kind of berries you like. So you can either use frozen, which is really great to use any time of year. Sometimes the things that we like are not always in season. Right now, blueberries are pretty readily available. So you might find some fresh blueberries, or you can get, like in this case, this is a multi-berry pack. So this has some raspberries in it, some blackberries, some strawberries. So we've got lots of things that we can put, or I guess there's not strawberries in this, but you could use strawberries. Any kind of berry that you like could go into this. So we're going to need 1 pound of that, and then we need some crushed pineapple. Now one thing to pay attention to, there's some different kinds of crushed pineapple that are out there, and since we're trying to make this diabetes friendly, make sure that you get the kind that's 100% juice rather than heavy syrup. So look for the juice when you find that. And then we need a box of sugar-free gelatin. So any kind of berry flavor is great. Not as much this time of year, but sometimes you'll find cranberry, which tastes really good. There's strawberry, there's raspberry, there's wild berry, all kinds of things that are out there. Tonight we're going to have raspberry in ours. And then the final ingredient is yogurt. We'll talk a little bit more. We're not going to use all these yogurts, but we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between all the yogurts that seem to be out there. I'll tell you, it was not that many years ago when you went to the dairy case and there were just a few things to choose from when it came to yogurt. And now there are many choices. So we'll talk a little bit about how to decipher what that label says and what might be the best for someone who is managing diabetes. Okay? So to get started, we're going to measure out our fruit. This is what our berry fluff looks like that we'll be having at the end. And in this case, it calls for a pound. So, okay, so what happens if you go and it says 3 pounds? How do you easily know how to measure that out? I'll tell you that it's going to be close to 3.5 cups of berries. But if you have kitchen scales, I highly recommend, if you don't, that you purchase some. They're pretty inexpensive. You can get them at most box stores. Even sometimes supermarkets will carry them as well. And it's a very convenient way to measure out your food, because portions are really important when it comes to managing our diabetes well. So we want to make sure that we know what is the correct portion size of the food that we're eating in order to know what that effect might have on our bodies. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and tear this, and like I said, we're going to do 1 pound, and we're just going to dump our berries in there. As I try to read it, I think I'm going to have to turn it so that it faces me, so that I'm pretty confident in how much we're putting in. To about 15 ounces, just a little bit more. There we are, 16 ounces, 1 pound of berries. This is going to go into a medium saucepan. So I will grab that here, and then we're going to take our can of pineapple, and in this case, it calls for a 1/8 ounce can of crushed pineapple. This is the typical size that you're going to find at the store, which is more like, this is 1 pound, 4 ounces, so 20 ounces. A lot more than what it calls for this recipe. So previously I've measured out what it would be for our 8 ounces of crushed pineapple right here. So you'll want to make sure that you drain that and reserve the juice, because the juice is what's going to go in here with our berries. So I'll go ahead and add the pineapple juice onto our berries, and then we're going to head on over to the stove top and soften these. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this on medium heat, and we don't need to stir it continually, but we're just going to make sure that we get these nice and soft. And of course, that's one thing that if you choose to use berries that aren't frozen, that process is going to go a little faster than if you use frozen berries. So we'll keep checking on that a little bit as we go. But the next thing we're going to do is to talk a little bit about our yogurt. So why in the world do I have 5 containers of yogurt here for you to look at? Is it because I love yogurt? Well, partly. I do love yogurt. But you'll notice that in our recipe, it calls for non-fat vanilla yogurt. Now, that could mean a lot of different things. Non-fat obviously implies that it's not going to have any fat. When you look at the yogurt selection at the grocery store, you could very easily see yogurt that's made from whole milk, so it could have a lot of extra fat in it. You could see low-fat options, and even here we've got our low-fat yogurt. Most of the rest of these are going to be our no-fat kind of options. But just because it's non-fat does not mean that it's going to be low in sugar. So that's something that I want you to really look for, because we're looking for total carbohydrates. What I love now about the new food labels, if you look at them, you'll see, if I maybe go this way, is that the easiest way to see it? All right. So if you look at these, it says total carbohydrates. It has fiber listed. In this case, there's no fiber. But then it lists what our sugar is that's added sugar. So that's a great way to tell, especially when we're talking about a dairy product like this, because milk naturally has sugar in it. There's lactose that's in milk. So naturally, yogurt is going to have lactose in it. But we can tell how much added sugar is in it by looking at the added sugars then on the label. So in this case, we're going to try to stay clear, even though this is non-fat, and we want to stay away from fat from a calorie standpoint. It's a really good idea to check out what our carbohydrates are as well. So we're just going to look at a few of these labels. I'm not endorsing any certain brands or anything like that. I just want to give you an idea without standing for 5 or 10 minutes in the dairy aisle checking out all the labels at what kinds of things you might see. So in this case, our total carbohydrates you can see is 16 grams, and that's 10 grams of added sugar in this one. Okay, so we've got another kind of, in this case, Greek yogurt. You'll see that the protein in Greek yogurt is much, much different. So we've got 14 grams of protein in this compared to our low-fat yogurt, which only has 7 grams. So that's one of the great things about Greek yogurt, is that it is more concentrated with its protein. It has added protein, milk protein, which is great for you. This is another that really caught my eye because it's a creative name with 000, but it says 0 grams added sugar. Okay, we've also got this one, which is only 4 grams of added sugar, but very low in its added sugar. But what caught my eye is that it also said that it's 0 for artificial sweetener. So if you don't have added sugar and you don't have artificial sweetener, then how in the world is it going to taste good as vanilla? Because there's also this option that's out there as well, which is our non-fat Greek yogurt, just plain, so no extra sugar added, no extra vanilla or any kind of flavoring that's added to it. But the way that this is sweet, instead of being an artificial sweetener, it's stevia, which is used in a lot of products for those with diabetes. Stevia is a natural sweetener. Now there's no real advantage, it's your preference completely over an artificial sweetener like acesulfame K or sucralose, things like that. Stevia is just another option for that. So make sure that you just check out what the labels look like, and you know, don't be afraid to compare those, but really check out especially the added grams of sugar. I'm going to go back over here and stir these up a little bit. So you can see there's a little more liquid down in there. So they're definitely starting to get a little soft. So we'll let that go a little longer while we measure out our yogurt. In this case, we need 2 cups of non-fat yogurt. And we'll just put that back in this bowl. Now I am going to try, we're going to go for this one this time. So this had non-fat, like the recipe called for, and then only has 4 grams of added sugar. So it has a little bit of an artificial sweetener added to it. Another thing to watch with artificial sweeteners is sometimes there can be like a cumulative effect when it comes to the taste from an artificial sweetener. So if you remember, we're going to be adding our sugar-free gelatin. That's going to have artificial sweetener in it. When we add our yogurt, if we're adding any yogurt that has an artificial sweetener in it, we may end up with something that's pretty sweet at the end. So I'm going to try adding in 1 cup of this. So we're going to go with about half of what this recipe calls for. And then the other half, it never fails. Someone always wants to talk to me on the phone when I'm on Facebook Live. Then we're going to add in some of our plain Greek yogurt, just so that I can show you kind of the difference in the texture of it. So you see this is not real runny, but it's certainly not real firm, right, when it comes to yogurt. This definitely has a firmer texture to it. You can see it's a lot thicker. It almost looks kind of maybe even like sour cream like. And this has started to separate a little bit, which is fine. That's just a natural thing that happens with a lot of dairy products. And we have plenty of yogurt to fill up our 2 cups for sure. So I will head back over and get our berries. And then we're going to stir our gelatin into that and make sure that we dissolve it really well. So the gelatin is a great way to just add that, that texture and that firmness, and adds in a lot of flavor as well. Put this underneath. So we'll get our box out here. Like I said, any kind of berry flavor is fine with this. If you're used to using regular Jell-O, you'll notice the packet is a lot smaller when it comes to sugar-free. So it kind of gives you an indication of how much sugar is in a normal packet of Jell-O. And, you know, we say that this is a diabetes-friendly recipe, but this is certainly something that can be used by anyone that's trying to watch the amount of sugar that they're consuming. Wow, I'm like already getting I can smell the intense raspberry that's coming from that. So stir this in really well. It's dissolving very well. Then we'll add in our pineapple. And one of the great things about a dessert like this is that it's a great way to enjoy fruit. You can still eat fruit while you have diabetes. It's just watching your portion size, okay? And taking into account that fruit is a carbohydrate. So whether it's fruit juice, like drinking apple juice or orange juice or anything like that, or it is a whole fruit, the great thing about eating the whole fruit is that there's fiber that comes in with that fruit, and fiber does a great job in helping to level out how our blood sugar is released and how insulin is working in our blood system. So it's a great, actually that's not too warm now. So it's a good thing to enjoy whole fruits rather than just relying on fruit juices when it comes to enjoying fruit. Okay, so we'll get our yogurt in here. Now, a favorite of mine, definitely in summer, is ice cream. And there are lots of different choices that are out there for ice cream. But for the most part, ice cream is going to be high in sugar. There are definitely options out there. But to buy ice cream that is low in sugar and low in fat sometimes can be quite expensive. They're not always like the mainstream kind of ice cream. So this is kind of a neat alternative. You can either put this into the refrigerator or you can freeze it, and it can be a really tasty frozen treat as well. So I will move these things out of the way. You'll notice that on the recipe, it calls for this to go into an 11 by 7 dish. One of the things that I talked about last week and talked a little bit about here is portion size. So when I made this up last night, I put this into 2 different containers because depending on how many people are in your household, you might be tempted to eat that 11 by 7 a little more quickly maybe than you should. So one great option, if there's only 1 or 2 of you that are going to be enjoying this, is to put it in a 2 smaller containers. Just stick one in the freezer to have later on, and then you can have one in the fridge that you enjoy. Now, if there's more people, or if you're going to have some family over, and you can definitely put it into the 11 by 7. So you'll see it is just full of fruit. There's going to be a lot of fruit flavor in this. And I'm going to use my scraper just a little bit to get the rest of this out. Fantastic color, packed with a lot of great fruit, good vitamin C, and some good fiber in there from that whole fruit that we're using. Okay, so this can just go into the refrigerator. You're going to want to put it in there for at least 3 hours. So this is a plan ahead kind of treat, but it will firm up very nicely, and you'll end up with dessert like this. Now, one of the last things that I wanted to talk about, I said we're going to beat the heat with a treat like this. There's some other things to consider when you are managing diabetes in the summer. So we've got a list of some things that are from the CDC, just as recommendations, things to think about during summertime as you're managing diabetes. And the first is to stay hydrated. So make sure that you're drinking plenty of water. Even if you don't feel thirsty, make sure that you're taking in that water. Avoid drinks that are caffeinated. So, a lot of coffee, a lot of, even if you're drinking diet soda, it can still have a lot of caffeine in it. Certain sports drinks can have a lot of caffeine as well. If you get tired of water, one of the things that you can do is slice up some fruit and make some fruit infused water. You could add some berries in, just put a pitcher in your refrigerator and then enjoy that. So there's no added carbohydrate to that. It's just that flavor that's coming out. Lemons are great to go in water as well. And I have found too, I'm an iced tea fan. One of the things that I've discovered is a apple cranberry tea. I just make like 1 cup at a time. Just heat up my water just like I was going to have a cup of hot tea and pour it over some ice cubes. and that makes a great kind of alternative if you're not drinking a lot of tea that's not adding a lot of caffeine to your day, but something to change it up maybe a little bit from water. Also, just make sure from a medicine and supply and equipment standpoint that you're keeping all those things cool. So keep those things out of the heat, especially your insulin. If you ever need to travel or take it anywhere, make sure that you have a cooler for that, but don't place it directly on an ice pack because you don't want it to freeze either. And then there's some other recommendations that you'll see there on the screen from the CDC. One thing that they suggest too is to think, like, if we would ever lose power, what would you do? So make sure that you have a backup plan for that, because we could have some summer storms. Not too long ago, we lost some power in our area, so might be a great idea to have that as your backup plan. And good to go. I just really appreciate you joining me today. Hopefully you'll try this recipe and make it, and it'll be a good way to beat the summer heat. Stay cool, stay inside when it's super hot. Make sure you wear light, loose-fitting clothing. Wear your sunscreen so that you don't get a sunburn. And I hope that you'll join me back here again next Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. And the next time, I know I said this last week, I got off by a week. Next time, I promise you, we will be making stir fry. So we're going to be looking at a spicy stir fry. So back to the main dish this time, and just looking at some creative ways to use some ingredients that are fresh this time of year, and also talking more about portion size and the importance of that in maintaining diabetes. So I hope you have a great evening tonight. Again, you can find more information at our website, which is coshocton.osu.edu. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next week.